While he is unconscious, Shiki dreams of the happy moments when he used to play in the park under his dad's watchful eyes. But then the dream turns dark abruptly, with Tsuyoshi dying at Samadere's hand. Shiki wakes up with a jolt as he stares into the bloodshot eyes of Samadere. But when he looks around, he finds himself gagged and tied to a chair in a large empty hall. Right behind him, the skater guy who kidnapped him is doing one-arm handstand push-ups with his umbrella, and he gets back on his feet as soon as he sees Shiki awake. The edgelord introduces himself as Nato, a fellow Oni, and quickly manifests his horns. Shiki is too confused by everything, and he can't even pay attention to Nato, who refuses to tell him where they are right now. He informs him that his dad's body is stored safely in another place, and he brought him here for retrieval and evaluation. Nato then suddenly skates to the whiteboard in the corner and drags it closer to Shiki, before flexing how fast and efficient it is to use roller skates instead of walking. Next, he begins explaining the Momotaro agency to Shiki, saying that he has already seen one guy who can control the black mist and use it like a weapon. The Momotaro agency finds and hunts Oni, and in response, the Oni created their own agency to fight back. Nato says that his job is to find newly awakened Oni like Shiki and bring them to a safe place where he can evaluate if they are worthy of joining the Oni agency. With that brief intro, he puts the whiteboard back in its place and then removes Shiki's gag so that he can interview him. As soon as he removes the gag, Shiki starts yelling at him to free him. He also curses Nato, threatening to kill him if he has harmed his dad's body, and Nato immediately deducts a point from his score that is already 0. He calls Shiki a moron for not understanding what safely stored means because he mentioned it a couple minutes earlier. Shiki gets mad at him and says there is no way he can trust a shady edgelord like him, and Nato wasn't expecting anything else from him. He decides to deduct more points from Shiki's score the more he curses and demands to be set free, telling him to cooperate if he wants to pass the evaluation. Shiki doesn't give a shit about the evaluation, but he wants to be free quickly, so he tries holding his anger. However, he can't even do that properly, and Nato tells him to stop giving him the creepy look. Shiki snaps on hearing this, and Nato decides to evaluate him using a non-standard method because normal things don't seem to work with nut jobs. He takes off his tie, and before Shiki can even realize what is going on, Nato uses the tie to strangle him with his full strength. Shiki panics as he loses his breath, and Nato says that a creature's true nature is revealed when it is close to death, and that is what he wants to see. Shiki tries to resist with his full strength, but he can't get out of the chokehold even after bleeding from every hole on his face. He soon loses consciousness, and Nato is disappointed in him, but the blood that Shiki just lost awakens as a result of its power. It turns into sharp spikes and attacks Nato, who dodges the attack without much difficulty. Suddenly, he finds a Gatling gun made of blood pointing at his head, and behind it, Shiki is in his berserker state. He opens fire at Nato, and then backs away after he is satisfied, but his attacks didn't even touch the edgelord who protected himself by coating his umbrella in his blood. He deducts 100 points from Shiki's score because he doesn't even know how to use his Oni blood, and then decides to show him how it is actually done, even though he won't remember anything once the berserker state ends. Shiki suddenly lunges towards him, but Nato is prepared for everything, and a few minutes later, Shiki regains his consciousness, lying defeated on the ground. He can't understand what just happened, but then he looks at his red hands and panics, realizing that he went out of control again. Nato calmly sits on top of him, saying that it is natural that his memory is a blank because when an Oni goes into berserk mode, they lose their mind. Around them, the hall is a total mess as a result of their fight, and Shiki tells Nato to stop lecturing him when he is also using his blood as a weapon. Nato immediately makes his blood umbrella disappear, telling Shiki that he never went berserk because he can actually control his power. He then declares that there is nothing to be said anymore because Shiki is disqualified from joining the Oni agency. Shiki still has no idea what the hell is happening, but if there is one thing he knows for sure, it is that Nato is ridiculously strong. He decides to swallow his pride and begs Nato to take him as his underling because he wants to get stronger and avenge his dad. Nato immediately refuses his request, telling Shiki that someone like him who doesn't use his brain while fighting is always the first person to die in a real battle. He calls him a useless disgrace who can neither control his brain nor his power, and Shiki uses every ounce of his strength to hold back his rage. Nato then declares that it is time for him to dispose of Shiki, because a berserk Oni is a liability to everyone. He uses his special ring to cut his thumb, letting a stream of blood trickle out. He turns the blood into an umbrella, and Shiki suddenly gets an idea about how to make him change his mind. He runs away from Nato's range, and then dashes towards him while dragging his fist on the ground till it bleeds. Nato quickly turns his umbrella into a spiky shield that will protect him from any melee attack, and then calculates the possible moves Shiki can use. Shiki jumps up at the last moment, which was among the possibilities that Nato calculated, but then he surprises him by using the spikes to jump to the side and point a bloody gun at his face. Shiki puts all his focus into the gun, shooting a powerful shot with the recoil sending him flying backwards. He can't believe that he managed to land a hit on Nato, but it turns out that he couldn't do it even this time. Nato simply blocks the blood bullet with his finger and shatters it, not giving Shiki any credit for the attack because he went halfway to berserk mode in order to attack in. As Shiki seems to lose his mind again, Nato decides to finish him off with his special move. He puts himself in a protective cage and summons archers made using his blood, ready to shoot at his command. However, as he notices Shiki fighting back against his berserker instincts and getting his power under control, Nato cancels his special move. Shiki is proud that he managed to control his power, but he falls on the ground because he just used up too much energy. Nato can't believe that not only Shiki controlled his powers, but he also suppressed berserker mode, which is not something everyone can do. He asks him how the hell did he do that, but Shiki smugly tells him to accept him as his underling to unlock the answer. Nato tells him that he will think about it, and Shiki decides to take that as a yes. He says that when Nato talked about controlling his blood, he didn't understand but when he saw him slice his thumb and use the blood to create a weapon, he got an idea. He thought that since they were both Oni, he could just ape his shit, and surprisingly, that worked. He didn't understand the fine details though, and he just let his arm bleed while yelling at it mentally to form a weapon. Shiki is still hyped that his gambit worked, and asks Nato what he thinks about that. Nato thinks that it is utter bullshit because that is not how things work. From his experience, dumb and emotional teens like Shiki have a hard time controlling their blood, while rational and calm people like him have the best chance at using their power properly. He thinks that Shiki doesn't listen to reason or even let his berserker mode control him, and he can use his raw instinct to brute force his power into obeying him. He thinks that it is a very rough method, but it can also give someone an explosive amount of power. He begins to wonder what to do with this unique case, when suddenly, Shiki tells him that he needs power to avenge his dad and kill the man who murdered him. He tells Nato that if he takes him in as an underling and teaches him everything, he will become useful to him. However, Nato refuses to consider that possibility. He turns his umbrella into a spear, telling him that people like him are a risk to society, because he didn't even know that he could control his power and just took a gamble. He says that he can't accept him as a lackey, and then acts like he is going to stab him with the spear, but only hits the floor near his head. He tells Shiki that he won't accept him as an underling but as a student, and that is really confusing for Shiki because he thinks both are the same thing. Nato tells him that he passed the test barely, but he will give him the chance to prove his abilities. Shiki can't make sense of what is going on, so Nato decides to start from the basics. He tells him that they are on an island called Hell's Doorstep, which was known as Onigashima in the past. It was the place where the original Momotaro massacred demons, but now it is a place where the Oni can live safely. At the center of the island, there is the Rosetsu Academy, which is a military school that trains Oni to fight against the Momotaro agency. Shiki gets freaked out on learning that he is on an island, but Nato pokes his face, telling him that it is not important. The most important part is that the Rosetsu Academy will teach him everything from general education, controlling his Oni blood, fighting techniques and the history between Momotaro and Oni. Nato is Shiki's homeroom teacher, and he tells him more about how they do things here at the academy, but that is more than his pea-sized brain can handle. Shiki doesn't even care about that because all he wants to know is if he can become strong enough to avenge his dad. Nato can't give him any guarantee, but he tells him that if he can't become strong enough to fight the Momotaro agency, he will be expelled from school. Soon, Shiki gets dressed up, and he is excited to go to a different kind of school, but Nato warns him that other people have passed the test this year, and he is probably the least skillful amongst them. Suddenly, Shiki remembers his dad and asks Nato where his body is. Nato replies that they have kept him in the morgue because they wanted Shiki to handle the funeral as per his beliefs. Shiki gets a bit gloomy on thinking about his dad's death, and Nato tells him that being a gloomy idiot is a waste of time, and he should focus only on becoming stronger so that he can get his revenge. Shiki says that he seems like a nice guy after all, and that embarrasses Nato, who speeds away, telling Shiki that if he doesn't reach the class before him, he will be expelled. Shiki somehow catches up to him, and as he wonders how should he enter the class to farm the maximum amount of aura, Nato just kicks him through the door. Shiki feels like he got some aura debt because of his uncool entry, and he asks the masked boy named Jin for some tissues for his nosebleed. Jin turns out to be an even bigger edgelord than their teacher, and he tells Shiki to stop talking to him. Shiki gets mad at that and starts teasing him for not having his horns yet. Jin simply manifests his horns, saying that only dumb rookies who can't control the horns flaunt them all the time. This comment offends another guy named Ikari, who also can't control his horns. Things start getting tense in the classroom with Shiki getting up close and personal with Jin. However, before things can get violent, Nato suddenly arrives behind them and Shiki finds himself sitting right next to Jin without even realizing when it happened. Jin is equally shocked, but Nato doesn't have time to waste with what his students think. He says that for their first lesson, they are going to play a game of tag. He takes all the students to the forest, telling them that they have 1 hour to get back to the school while avoiding being caught by him. Nato then declares that anyone who doesn't make it back to school in a time limit will be expelled, and he doesn't care about Shiki's objection. He then tells the students that they are free to use their powers, and he will only use his in case someone goes berserk. Jin confidently says that he might get killed if he doesn't use his powers, and Nato has no issue with that. Instead, he says that if someone kills him, they will graduate instantly, and then they can join any squad that they wish to fight the Momotaro agency. He then says that the school is there to prepare them for real-life challenges, and he is going to test them at each step. He asks everyone if they are ready, and Shiki replies that he is going to give it his all and ace the tests, but that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.